First, uncertainty. Was Afghanistan a disputed election, perceived corruption, and 8 years of war against the Taliban paw on the misery? All these and more on World Insight. Hello and welcome to this edition of World Insight. I'm Zhou Yue. As always, we've got 30 minutes of news and analysis from a Chinese perspective on the stories that count. We start in Afghanistan, a country stuck in political limbo. The outcome of the presidential election on August the 20th is yet unclear, and doubts are growing about its credibility. This is proving a problem for U.S. and European efforts to bolster declining support for the almost 8-year war against the spreading Taliban insurgency.
President Hamid Karzai seems on course for a first-round re-election victory with 54% of the vote. On Tuesday, the Afghanistan Independent Election Commission announced the result, with over 90% of polling stations tallied. The August election was supposed to offer a sign of political progress. Instead, it's been engulfed in controversy. A UN-backed watchdog said it had found clear and convincing evidence of fraud and ordered a partial recount.
In light of the concerns that have arisen over irregularities, we are today calling on Afghanistan's Election Commission and the Complaints Commission to redouble their efforts to ensure full rigour in their work at every stage.
That means Karzai could have votes taken away from him. The IEC has set aside results from 600 out of more than 26,000 polling stations where it suspects irregularities. The opposition candidate, Dr. Abdullah, has called the results a tragic joke.
We have insecurity in this country, we have bad governance, we have corruption, we have narcotics, we have a war, we have an insurgency. Yes? On top of that, if a leadership is imposed upon the people based on fraudulent elections, what will happen? What will happen to Afghanistan?
Whatever the outcome, the apparent fraud has dealt another blow to the image of a government seen by many in the West as feeble and corrupt. Hamid Karzai has ruled Afghanistan since U.S.-led Afghan forces ousted the Taliban in 2001. Born in Kandahar in 1957, the fourth of 7 sons, Karzai went to school in Kabul before going to India to study political science. Politics became his passion. He is fluent in several Afghan languages. All this makes him the best choice for the West to realize their interests. In 2004, he won the direct vote for president. His U.S. connections and high international profile have helped him persuade wealthy nations to commit to post-war reconstruction. But during the past 8 years, the process has stagnated. And a U.S. congressional report says perceived corruption is fueling public anger toward the Karzai administration. The president cannot hold on to power without Western military and financial support, especially from the U.S. In a society riven by ethnic divisions and feuds among powerful warlords, Karzai's authority has often seemed more symbolic than real. His efforts to rein in powerful factional leaders and extend his writ outside the capital have often backfired. Opponents have derisively labeled him as the mayor of Kabul.
For hundreds of years, Afghanistan has maintained a social structure of tribes. Citizens are loyal to the tribal elders who have more influence on the fate of the country than the presidential election. What the U.S. wants is a strong and uncorrupted president who can better achieve their interests there. Karzai is the best choice for the West, but not an ideal one.
With the results still uncertain, the pressure is on the White House to take a firm stand. The day after the election, Karzai's campaign manager prematurely declared a first-round victory by a wide margin. The same day, President Barack Obama's envoy, Richard Holbrooke, had a tense meeting with Karzai to urge him not to preempt the result. Karzai has taken to venting to reporters about his perceived mistreatment at the hands of Obama officials. Last week, he did so to a French journalist. Speaking of himself in the third person, Karzai said, "The Americans attack Karzai in an underhand fashion because they want him to be more tractable. They are wrong. It is in their interest that Afghanistan's people respect their president." Friction between the Afghan and U.S. governments is growing after last week's raid that killed 90 civilians. A U.S. warplane summoned by German troops fired on 2 fuel tankers hijacked by the Taliban in northern Afghanistan.
We have suffered enough during 3 decades of war in this county. Now we want to have a peaceful future. But this incident has created a big worry among people, and we are wondering what to do and where to go.
In May, in the western province of Farah, airstrikes killed 147 Afghan civilians. It was the worst case of civilian casualties since the 2001 invasion. Karzai has charged the U.S.-led command with excessive force in the war against the Taliban, alienating the civilian population.
We need to find a way to end the loss of civilian life, especially where and when it occurs as a consequence of aerial bombardment or the use of airplanes in villages.
The new commander of the U.S. and NATO-led forces, General Stanley McChrystal, is trying to mend relations.
Well, I haven't changed my thoughts at all. I think this effort is all about protecting Afghans from all kinds of harm, and so we've got to make every effort to do that.
But the efforts to protect Afghans have limitations.
The frequent misstrikes indicate the lack of soldiers, so the army depends much more on the technological military power. This past summer was the deadliest period of the war. The U.S. government cannot afford the public pressure for loss of soldiers' lives.
Since 2001, over 1,300 foreign soldiers have died as a result of violence or accidents. Over half of them were Americans. McChrystal has 103,000.
The U.S. hasn't a long-term interest there. Staying there for 8 years is to defeat Al-Qaeda. But judging from their previous military commitment, it seems they're not going all out to win. There's a kind of fear of getting stuck in a quagmire.
The U.S. public is losing patience. A recent CNN poll indicated that 57% of those Americans polled oppose the war in Afghanistan.
President Obama doesn't have a lot of time to show results. In fact, many Americans have grown disenchanted with the prolonged mission and what's being told to them.
21-year-old Joshua Bernard was the 19th American to die in Afghanistan in August. He was among the 21,000 U.S. soldiers sent by President Obama this year, in part to help secure the presidential elections. This Friday was the 8-year anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. Will the war in Afghanistan bring more casualties? It's time to review the strategy.